A new report sheds light on how some politicians are using political donations to fund things which don't seem political at all, like spending millions on upscale dining and ski resorts. This kind of spending is all perfectly legal. It falls under a special type of deregulated political action committee known as a leadership PAC. Research by Issue One and the Campaign Legal Center finds that from January 2019 to December 2020, roughly 1 in 5 members of Congress spent less than half of the money raised by their leadership PACs on political expenses. Joining me now is Issue One's research director, Michael Beckel. He's one of the authors of that report. Issue One is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization seeking to reduce the role of money in politics. Michael is also a former award-winning journalist at the Center for Public Integrity and Center for Responsive Politics. So, Michael, welcome. Thanks very much for being with us. You know, this is the kind of story, and I think if people hear this for the first time, it can sort of conjure up this sense of how can that possibly be? Can you just start, Michael, by explaining, first of all, what exactly is a leadership PAC? What are they supposed to be used for? And where does the money come from?
That's right. Most people have no idea that leadership PACs are so prolific in Washington, D.C. These are special political action committees that members of Congress use typically to raise money and dole that money out to like-minded candidates and political allies to their respective political parties. These have been around for roughly 40 years with the intended purpose that lawmakers who have a higher profile, who have it easier to raise money, will lend some financial support to their vulnerable colleagues or candidates who are less well known. But our report found that roughly 120 members of Congress used their leadership PAC funds for things that weren't political contributions or contributions to political groups or the party committees. And roughly 25% or less was spent on politics by about 40 politicians during the last Congress. So instead of doling out contributions to like-minded candidates and political groups, you had a proliferation of members of Congress using these leadership PACs as slush funds, bankrolling expenditures to lavish restaurants, luxury resorts, all taking in money from special interest groups and lobbyists who are trying to curry favor with them in Washington.
I just want to underscore your data. So your report finds, as you said, that between January of 2019 and December of 2020, 43 members of Congress spent less than 25% of their leadership PAC funds on politics. So which lawmakers are we talking about, and what did they spend this money on?
Yes, that's right. 43 members of Congress spent less than a quarter from their leadership PACs on the things that most members of Congress are supposed to be spending their leadership PAC funds on. This was a bipartisan problem that there were some Democrats and some Republicans on the list. For instance, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky spent about 12% of his leadership PAC funds in the last 2 years on the things that these things were intended for: direct campaign contributions to other candidates or political groups. And instead, he was spending significant sums on dining, on lodging, on transportation, and stays at some of the top resorts in the country. On the House side, Representative Gwen Moore, a Democrat from Wisconsin, also spent about 12% on politics during the last 2 years, and her leadership PAC spent significant sums, again, on dining, on lodging, on transportation, food and beverages, and even event tickets. And because the FEC filings, the federal campaign finance filings, are so vague, we don't even know exactly which events she was buying tickets for, but she was using services like StubHub to make large expenditures for event tickets. And we found one member of Congress, now a former member of Congress, George Holding, a Republican from North Carolina, who spent just 2% of his leadership PAC funds on politics during this 2-year period. And instead, the bulk of the money that he spent went towards airfare, and restaurants, and hotels, car services, even spending 5 figures at an exclusive men-only club in London.
Well, I mean, how do people justify their spending, these lawmakers? And what's being done, Michael, to regulate the use of these funds?
This is a bipartisan problem that has a bipartisan solution. There are members of Congress who have said that leadership PAC funds should not be able to be used by members for their own personal use. You know, that is a common sense solution that Republicans, Democrats, and independents should all agree that any contribution that a candidate raises, whether it's for their official campaign committee or for their leadership PAC, that money shouldn't be able to be pocketed or used for personal expenditures. So we have been calling on Congress and the Federal Election Commission to act to rein in the abuse of leadership PACs, to provide more guidance and clarity to members of Congress to say that leadership PACs and campaign committees should play by the same set of rules. But today, very little is being done to tame leadership PAC spending, while most members of Congress are using leadership PACs for their intended purpose. The report really lays clear that this is a bipartisan problem that ought to be taken seriously by people of conscience in both chambers of Congress and in the Federal Election Commission, which is the top regulator of campaign finance issues in Washington.
Right, and it's so important for people to know and understand so they can make informed decisions if they see something happening with their own lawmaker that falls under this kind of category, decide whether or not that is the kind of representative they want representing them in Washington. Michael Beckel for us. Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.